back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by beautiful actress and musician, Jessica Hottman. How are you doing today, Jessica?
Hey, everyone. I am doing great, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, this is such an honor for me. So for those of you that don't know Jessica yet, her band, the Hottman Sisters, has toured all over the U.S. Her newest project, Giveth, will be releasing a 9-song album this fall. Super stoked on that. Hopefully start touring in 2022, as long as COVID and Delta can get the hell out of here. She's landed roles in the upcoming short film, Shadow of a Doubt, and also the film Chronicles of Bullethead. But before all that, you guys are going to be seeing Jessica is young Tina Shepard in the upcoming fan film Roseblood, a Friday the 13th fan film. I'm rocking my new blood t-shirt right here because this is the continuation of it. And also, Lar Park Lincoln reprises her role as Tina Shepard in this film. So you playing young Tina, opposite of Lar Park Lincoln, that has to be like, for me, Lar was one of my crushes as a kid, and now you are that character. Like, you have taken over that character in the younger version. What is this like for you to become part of such an iconic franchise?
It's honestly like the coolest thing ever. I feel like it's like somebody already built this amazing world, and I get to sort of just step into it and be a part of it. And it's the coolest feeling. And working with Lar, she is such a sweet person. She's also just a badass chick. Like, she still is, even after all this time. So I can understand why everyone has a crush on her, because I feel like I have a crush on her too. She was just great. She gave me so many pointers. I'm new to the world of acting, so she was able to just give me industry tips and tips on being a female in the acting industry, and then also just an insight into the role of Tina, which was difficult and fun and challenging, and all the things.
And it's good to have a role model like Lar there to help you out, because from what I've had conversations with Lar. I've had her on the show before too, and we've talked outside of the show. She's very strong-willed, she's very smart, and she seems like a very good person to be able to take you under their wing. Because I know that as being a woman and trying to capture, do the acting thing, I know it's got to be hard. And some of the things that you women go through are just absolutely repulsive and disgusting. And having someone like Lar there to kind of help guide you through it, that's so amazing that you can have someone like that around you, because I can't even imagine what you guys go through. So I'm glad that you found someone that was able to take you under their wing. But real quick, before we go any further, Peter Anthony, the director of Roseblood, sent me a little clip, guys. And there's 2 little mini clips here mashed together. So I want to check these out real quick so you guys can check them out. Watch this.
This place is just a test, a maze. And I'm the lab rat, aren't I? You're just providing the cheese. Well, I hope your little experiment works. I really do. Not that you'll lose any sleep over it if the lab rat dies.
Do you read me?
No way!
He has no face!
So in this role, Jessica, like I said, you're playing a young Tina Shepard, and obviously knowing that she's gone into, spoiler free, obviously, in this conversation with him, you're saying you don't care if the lab rat dies. Like, what, without spoiling it, what's kind of going on in this scene?
Yeah, well, I think in a way it's sort of, paying tribute to the new blood, and the fact that Tina has been this sort of lab rat from day one. You've had Dr. Cruz in the original part 7, who was trying to evoke these powers from within her. So we're seeing that Tina again is some kind of lab rat. Without giving it away, she's kind of going through being a test subject a little bit.
And what I love about the very end of this clip, because obviously these are 2 clips spliced together, guys. And again, Peter, thank you so much for this, because just watching this gave me goosebumps, like little emo goosebumps all over. I was so excited to watch this. And when you see the knife, the machete come through the door, and you hear, "He doesn't have a face," like, that has me even more excited to see the direction that you guys are going with this, because I know Peter from some of the other projects he's done as well. The guy's a genius. And the thing that I've always said with fan films, I appreciate a fan film more than I do a Hollywood film at this point, because the fan films are for the fans. They're for fans by fans. They don't give a shit about the money that's coming back. What they care about is making something in the world that they love and they want to share their genuine love of these franchises that we all grew up with us. And whether it be the Never Hike franchise, whether it be Jason Rising, or the stuff that Peter does, which is absolutely amazing. And this one, the continuation is what I'm so excited about, because you're going to be a badass Tina. I can tell you right now. And just from watching that clip, your intensity in this clip has me so excited. So before we get into the reason why we're here, let me just ask you this, Jessica. What was it like being Tina? Because I know what it was like, you said, being on set and being with Lar. But what was it like to be Tina Shepard?
Oh, it was, honestly, I still feel like there's a part of her in me. It's like I became a Tina. I really became part of Tina and the character of Tina. And it was really cool because Tina has mind powers, and I've always wanted to play a role where I have, the telekinesis or the mind powers. So getting to kind of do that and feel like I almost had mind powers for a while, which it was really awesome. And then Tina, she's such a complex character. She's very emotional, and she tells a story through her eyes. So I know when Peter and Lar were trying to find a young Tina, they were looking for somebody who could tell a story through their eyes. And that's what Lar has always done with the character. So I really wanted to bring that. And I just felt like all my intensity was here. And a lot of people on set were actually like, you were kind of terrifying looking into your eyes because they were so wide the whole time. But yeah, the role of Tina is great. I just think that anytime that a female gets to come in and just kind of kick butt for a while, I'm sold. I love it, And we also have another character, Rose, coming into this film, who's equally as cool, without me giving away too much.
Sure.
So yeah, it was great.
That's something I'm looking forward to as well. And something else that you were just talking about that I wanted to bring up, the similarities between you and Lar's eyes is something that, I mean, just even as human beings, not just the Tina part, but between you and Lar as people, you both have kind eyes, but you can see intensity in your eyes as well. So they couldn't have cast a more perfect person to reprise the role of young Tina. So I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited to see where this goes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I give it all to the eyes, because I actually had like darker hair when I did the audition tape, and I wrote in, I was like, hey, I'd be willing to dye my hair blonder. So I think these are what got me the job.
Yeah, and I'm glad it did, because just from watching the one clip that I've seen so far, the intensity is there, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of this film. I'm so proud of Peter. This is something that has this is his baby, and I know how proud he is of this. And he wouldn't have cast you if he didn't think you were going to knock it out of the fucking park. So I'm so excited to see this. So we know what you got going on in the future with Roseblood and with hopefully a tour, and we know what's going on with you right now. But now, Jessica, I want to take it back to the past. And I want to talk about what got you started in this horror genre that we all know and love so much, your first horror movie. And this is a doozy, because we're going to have some fun with this one. And your first horror movie was?
The Watcher in the Woods. And so if you're not familiar with this film, it's from, I believe, 1980. And what's crazy about this film is it's actually a Disney 1980 horror film. I had no idea Disney even was making horror films. Obviously, I was born after 1980, but later when I researched the film, I was shocked to find that it actually was a film from Disney. It just doesn't seem like it in the least for what we know Disney today.
No, and it's funny because I always go back. Unfortunately, I don't own a physical copy of this. Fortunately, it is available to watch for free on YouTube. So I have the link down here for those of you that have not seen it. And when I was watching it, the first thing that pops up is Walt Disney Presents, and I was like, "Shut the," I haven't seen this movie in so long, but there's a certain scene in it that I've always remembered that we'll get to. And when I seen it was a Disney movie, I was the same way. I was like, "No way." This movie scared me as a kid. I liken it to The Witches almost, like the way that it's that this terrifying for the younger generations. So, do you remember how old you were the first time you seen it, Jessica?
Yeah. So also a side note, I actually haven't watched this film since I first saw it. And I have just this precious like memory of it as being my first horror film. So I don't want to like ruin it, but I still remember it so vividly. And I was about 8 years old. I was spending the night at a friend's house, and she had this older sister who was like into all the cool music, into the cool movies.
Sure.
She was babysitting us, and her parents were like, okay, if you're going to go rent a movie, which she was planning on doing, like rent something Disney. And she was like, okay, yeah, I'll rent a Disney movie. So she rented The Watcher in the Woods, which is a Disney movie. She was not wrong, but it was my first time seeing a horror film, and I was terrified. And there's a whole scene, like every time that like the main character like looks into a mirror, there's like a young girl that's like reaching out like, oh, needing help. And I could not look in the mirror for weeks after that. And my mom was so mad that I had watched that film, but it was awesome. I still remember it. It's like imprinted on my mind.
Well, I'm sorry those mirrors had to miss you for that couple of weeks. And it's funny because watching it now, you catch things that you didn't so much catch when you were a kid. Like there's a scene in here where the little sister writes Narek on the wall, and it's Narak. And that turns out to be the name of the dog, or Nerak. I'm sorry. And then obviously when you look in the mirror, it flips around to Karen, who was the name of the little girl that you see in the mirrors. And there's little things like that that you didn't see when you were a little kid. But the minute I see Narek, I was like, oh, it's Karen backwards. Yeah, I should, The Shining has taught me this, to look at things backwards.
Okay, I was going to get into this because I didn't know if you were going to ask me what my favorite current horror movie is, but it is The Shining, which also came out in 1980, I believe. And both of them have that backwards writing thing. And there's something about that to me that's just so creepy. Like I still remember that scene you're talking about from The Watcher in the Woods. And it was terrifying.
it really was like, and it's one of those things where I think it actually makes more sense in The Watcher in the Woods because the person's in the mirror. So if they were writing it, it would be backwards. So we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to really dive headfirst into it now, Jess. Which scene was it from The Watcher in the Woods that affected you the most?
Oh, it's an easy one. Even though I haven't seen it in a while, it's the scene where the lead character goes into the fun house of mirrors and all of a sudden she starts to see that girl and that girl is surrounding her in the fun house of mirrors. Chills.
She's saying, help me.
Yes.
Help me.
Help me.
This is like,
and I'm like, oh my gosh, she needs help.
Yes, it's such a powerful scene because you were just talking about strong lead female characters and being able to act with their eyes. And the young lady, please forgive me because I can't remember her name. I think it was Kyle, her real name, but her acting skills with her facial expressions and her eyes in this movie really encapsulate who she is as a character. And something we talked about on this podcast before, Jessica, and I would love to talk about it because I have one here with me. When you talk about strong female characters and strong final girls, horror has always been ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, whether it be social issues or women kicking the shit out of men. I mean, you have the term final girl from the 70s and 80s when you got, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien, Nightmare on Elm Street, all these movies where you have this badass man or creature villain and you have the woman that's kicking the dog shit out of it. So, I mean, to have you in here, and let's talk about Friday the 13th, Part 7. You have Tina, who is the first character in that whole franchise, besides the young Corey Feldman, to go after Jason. She didn't, try to protect herself from Jason. She was like, fuck that. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna take him out. So, the final girl, and I know that term is kind of, look frowned upon these days, but I love the term. I love the final girl in all films. I love the strong female leads because you don't need men to protect females all the time. And horror has always been ahead of that. You have more final girls than you do final men. So to have this woman in this film portray the eyes and the expressions the way that we were just talking is so intense to talk about. So we talked a little bit about, the scene that affected you the most. And I know you haven't seen this film in probably 3 or 4 years since you were young, but what would you say if you can remember your favorite scene from The Watcher in the Woods would be?
Okay, this is going to be like a little like blippy, but I remember there was a scene, I think in the end, where they're in a church and there's like a bell that falls down. That scene I just remember, and I think that's the resolve. Like maybe the little girl is brought back. I can't remember how the movie actually ends, but I'm
not going to spoil it, guys, but the links are here.
There's a bell and there's a church, and that's all you need to know. But that scene I remember was like one of my favorite scenes of the film. So.
And one thing about this film, like you were talking about, it made it so you didn't want to look in mirrors. There's another scene that I wanted to dig into with you real quick, where she gets the mirror when they're moving and she has no reflection. She can't see her own reflection. And she starts touching the mirror and then it cracks and you see the reflection of Karen in there with her eyes covered, screaming. And even as a little kid, something like that has always been so scary to me. You look at the 1990 miniseries of It, when the photo album with Georgie, something that we all looked at, we all had when we were kids, was a photo album. And they throw that photo album and it comes over to the picture of Georgie and he winks at Bill. Like that's something that always affected me because it's real. You look at someone in a mirror and the mirror breaks, like that's real to me. Like I could really see that happening. And so I can imagine an 8-year-old young lady would be terrified of a film like this, even though it is Walt Disney. It is a Walt Disney horror film, which is so funny to say now in 2021. But I can totally understand where your fear of this movie came from.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was something about that mirror thing that just seems so real to me. And anytime that I saw anything scary that, you know, there was this other movie that was, I think, kind of a kid's movie, like Don't Look Under the Bed. It was like, that was very real to me because something could have actually been under my bed or something could have been in the mirror. And I remember I used to just stand and look at the mirror and just wait for something to appear when I was finally able to face the mirror again, that is. For a while, I was like, I don't want to see any mirrors. But when I could look in the mirror again, I was like, okay, something's got to be in here because it just seems so real to me at the time.
Yeah. And especially the way that, because the effects in this movie are great, you know, for the time. Like she actually touches the mirror and you can see her touching it, but there's no reflection of her and it's great. One last scene I want to talk about. I don't know if you remember this scene or not, but they're out in the woods trying to find Narek the dog and she falls into the river and she gets stuck under the sticks. There's a bunch of logs and sticks under there in the river. And the old lady who was Karen's mom comes out and she's got that big stick and she's pushing her down and it looks like she's trying to drown her in the water. She's got that just dark, empty look on her face. And then it cuts and they're in the bedroom and the little sister's like, she saved you from the river. And you're like, how the fuck did she save her by doing that?
She was like plunging her down the river.
Yes. So like that's another scene that on a rewatch, I'm like, this is dark. For, you know, Disney stuff. Like it blows my mind that Disney experimented a little bit with this. And I wish they would do more like this again now.
I know. I feel like the older you get, the more you're just like, oh man, things used to be so great. But really, truly in this instance, I wish that Disney would have just explored that side more and kept doing that.
Yeah, because this is, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, guys, but this is a great movie. Like, we watched it again, and I was just like, wow. Because I hadn't seen this in a long time either. So on a rewatch, I was just like, wow, this was an incredibly fun watch.
Yeah.
You know, like, it was fun. It was a fun watch. Like you said, the resolution at the end is great. You know, some of the acting is a bit spotty, but that happens when you get children actors. So we did already touch on this a little bit, but we're going to dive really deep into it now, Jessica. We talked about your first horror movie, but now, even though I know the answer, I got to go scream on you. What's your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite horror movie?
Well, I'm going to have to say The Shining, just because to me, that movie, oh boy, it encapsulates so many different types of horror. You have somebody chasing someone, you have psychological horror, you have blood, you have just so many elements. It's a film that people are still puzzled by and perplexed by. And there's all these theories out there about what it actually means and what it doesn't mean. And to me, anytime a film can do that in any genre, it's incredible. But just specifically the horror element of this film is so terrifying that I think about it and I could just get like a tear in my eye or get goosebumps just thinking about the film. So it has to be chosen as my favorite.
The best thing about The Shining, and I'll say this until the day that I die, one, the acting. The acting is absolutely phenomenal throughout the whole movie. But like you take a scene like Danny riding his tricycle down the hall and the cam following him. I can show you that scene with no audio and you're going to hear that scene. You're going to hear that scene in your head. I can show you the scene of, you know, Jack walking up the stairs. And even though if there's no volume, you're going to hear, I said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. Bash them right the fuck in. Like you're going to hear that because this movie is beyond iconic. You know, it was perfectly shot. Sure, he was kind of an asshole on set, you know, but the thing is Wendy was amazing in this film. You know, and I think that she's an unsung hero in horror films. It's such an underrated character. Like the arc that she goes through of wanting to forgive him and wanting to go with him to this hotel after he hurt Danny. And one of the best speeches of all time in any horror movie is Jack at the bar, you know, when he's like, I love him. I wouldn't hurt him. okay, I heard him, but I didn't mean to. Like
Yeah.
the emotion that he has in that scene. And I want to bring up something else for you real quick. We talked about The Shining, which is obviously phenomenal. What were your feelings on Dr. Sleep?
I actually just recently watched that, and I had my reservations going into it, as anyone would. But I gotta say, I think the film was very long. Personally, I think that there was maybe moments that didn't need to be as long. But overall, like especially at the end of the film, the way that they just paid sort of a tribute to the original was fun for me. I know a lot of people might have criticized that part, like, oh, you're relying on the original. But for me, it was fun to go back to the Overlook Hotel in that way, sort of on a continuation of the storyline. So overall, I enjoyed it.
I absolutely love it. I think Rose the Hat is one of the best villains in all of horror. And what I love about that third act that you're talking about is up until that third act, this movie could stand on its own.
Yeah.
It could be a standalone film. And I think that, yeah, sure, some of the third act was fan service. Obviously, like him looking through that door, or when Rose the Hat is walking with him up the stairs, it's just like a mirror of Jack and Wendy. But you needed that third act to be able to tie it into The Shining. You couldn't have a Shining sequel without the Overlook Hotel. And The Shining ends the way that Dr. Sleep ends. Jack didn't die out in the book. Jack didn't die out in the maze. He died destroying the Overlook Hotel. So I mean, I feel like, yeah, sure, there was some fan service in there, but it is so made up for by the performances in the film. Like I said, Rose the Hat genuinely terrified me.
So scary, yeah.
Like when they're killing that baseball boy.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
I have a 13-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old daughter. And that scene ripped my heart out of my chest. Mike Flanagan is one of the best new directors out there when it comes to, you got Ouija Origins of Evil, Oculus, Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. This guy is phenomenal. And the things that he does, I think he is the new Stephen King. He does a lot of Stephen King adaptations, but the way he tells those stories is absolutely beautiful.
Yes. And there is such like an indescribable, terrifying element to a lot of those things you just listed. And it's really, it's like hard to even describe it, but there's something very specific that's easy to latch onto and feel a part of. So yeah, I was really impressed overall with the film. And like you were talking about with the baseball boy, like that was maybe one of the most intense scenes that I think I've ever seen played out as much as it was in a film.
And what I love about it, and this is going to sound really weird, I know, because they're killing a little boy, but it was done classy. It wasn't gratuitous. You know what I mean? Like, again, you can't say classy and killing children in the same sentence. I get that. But the way that the film was shot, it's heartbreaking as all get out, but it's not overly bloody. It's not overly disgusting. It breaks your heart, but it doesn't gross you out. So kudos to you, Flanagan, for killing that kid the right way. So now, Jessica, before I let you go, I have one last question for you. We always end these with the same question, and this one might be a little hard for you, but we're going back to The Watcher in the Woods, and we are going to rank this movie on a skull count. What we're doing, 0 skulls is the worst, 5 is the best. You can use half and quarter skulls, but we're not being critics. We're not judging it on acting, production, score, color correction, none of that. Right now, we're not being critics. We're judging this movie strictly on what it means to you and how much this movie affected you the first time you watched it. So 0 the worst, 5 skulls is the best. What's your ranking of The Watcher in the Woods?
I got to go 5 skulls because to me, this was my gateway into the world of horror and into that part of my brain just like turning on and being like, what is this as a kid? It still is a memory in my head. It still creeps me out. And for me, that's 5 skulls,
Yeah. And like you said, you refuse to look in mirrors. It's funny how horror can do that to us. And for repeat viewers, I'm sorry you got to hear the story again, but I have a friend that growing up would absolutely not sleep with sheets on his bed because of Nightmare on Elm Street. When Jesus Garcia's rod gets the sheet around his neck in the jail cell, that scared him so bad when he was a kid. He wouldn't use sheets on his bed. So horror can have a great effect on us or a terrible effect on us. You just used a great term that I love, gateway, because guys, I don't condone drug use, but watching your first horror movie is like doing drugs for the first time. You get that high, and then you're constantly chasing that dragon again, trying to get that feeling again, trying to get that fear. And for me, that was House from 1986. that was my first horror movie. And since then, I absolutely fell in love, and there's nothing I wouldn't do in this horror world. I love it so much. So I didn't say this at the top, guys, but I'm going to say it now. You can find Jessica on social media. I have all her links down here in the description. So make sure you follow her, because I got Roseblood down here too. You guys are going to want to know when this film comes out. You're going to see her as a young Tina Shepherd. You're going to see Lar back, and there's some other surprises in there, some other cast members that I don't want to spoil, but you can follow them right now and you can get it right from the horse's mouth. So Jessica, don't go anywhere, please. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.